Nice to meet you guys. I actually do not invest in biotech at all. I am an enterprise B2B investor, but I'm happy to be invited here. Thanks, Reza, for the invitation. And this is a version of a talk that I gave at another meetup called ML Ops, and hope you find it useful. So a lot of times, just as by virtue of being an investor, friends come up to me and say, I have an idea for an AI startup. Is it a good one? And so I just wanted to kind of be a little bit more systematic and robust in thinking about where you can find AI opportunities, especially now that it seems like everything is possible. So just a quick, very short commercial on us. We're Vertex Ventures. We invest in seed and Series A, enterprise B2B. Mostly we do infrastructure type of investment. That being said, over the last 12 months, I've switched my focus to applied AI, so AI in application layer. If you're building in RCM, hit me up. That's one of my focus areas of late. And then these are some of our investments, which you may or may not recognize. Okay. So let's just start with the bitter lesson of building companies. And I think this is especially true in life sciences, even though I'm not an investor in life sciences. Just because you've done something hard doesn't mean what you've done is valuable. This is especially true with my more technical friends who have used AI technology and completed something that was previously impossible. And then further, just because it's valuable, meaning it brings value to the users, doesn't mean it's a commercially viable business. And even one step further, it doesn't mean that it's a VC backable business. And so if you're raising venture capital, you're really shooting for the moon, trying to build a standalone multi-billion-dollar company. So because things are moving so quickly, how can you identify where to build? And this decision is really hard because everything seems possible. A bunch of the ideas look the same as they did in the past. There's a lot of technical complexity, even though many of the barriers have decreased. For example, this image I generated with ChatGPT. I'm noticing now that there are a lot of duplicates, post-its. But anyways, yeah, drowning in a sea of startup ideas. And then if you're building an application, the underlying infrastructure is changing really rapidly. I think the best way to go about this is just to simplify. Try to identify what are the most important dimensions on which you should judge an idea, and then use that to iterate. And so here's my proposal for a simple mental model as you think about perhaps starting a company. So every enterprise, and I should also just, again, caveat that I'm an enterprise B2B investor. So just this might not apply very well in consumer facing or life sciences, but hopefully you find it useful. So every business is just a distribution of tasks. And Clayton Christensen called it jobs to be done. Every product is solving a job to be done. And so the two axes that I think are most important when thinking about where value can be captured are criticality and frequency. Frequency is really easy. It's just how often a task is done. So a task can be done maybe once a year or many times a day. And then criticality is a little bit fuzzier, but criticality, what I mean by that is if the task isn't completed or isn't completed to a high enough quality, it has existential implications for the business. So if you're a doctor and you don't collect payments, that is a critical part of your business, even if the service you provide is very good. All right, so let me just draw a few kind of generalizations. And obviously every single enterprise is gonna look like a different distribution of dots along these two axes. And you can imagine a lot of different dimensions on which to make this decision. But the reason I like this framework is because it's super simple. And it also acknowledges one key fact, which is that technical complexity is not a moat. It never really is a moat. And especially today when the cost of mimicking or copycatting is continually decreasing, the kind of first mover advantage you have is less and less valuable. So that being said, here are some generalities that you can draw from all businesses. So if you think about high frequency and high criticality tasks, I would posit to you that most of these tasks have a very low tolerance for errors. And because you have that low tolerance for errors and you want it to be, if you're building a business to automate these tasks, they fall more under what has traditionally been addressed by RPA or robotic process automation. There are companies like UiPath or Blue Prism. These are basically heuristic-based automation systems. In the agent world, these are agentic workflows. So it's not an agent in the sense that it's going and making independent choices. It's more an agent in that it chooses what workflow is most appropriate for the use case. But once that workflow is initiated, you have a series of steps, and it's very reliable and repeatable. And that's why sometimes building a business in this kind of yellow area is a little bit tricky, because the value proposition looks very similar to what we've done in the past. Okay, low frequency and high criticality tasks. Think of like once in a company's lifetime type of things, like M&A, acquisition, IPO, PR crises. These are places where like humans really shine. And they're often things that you need the kind of human perspective to address appropriately. More than that, they don't happen that frequently, so it's not really worth it to automate a lot of these tasks. So at least for the foreseeable future, most of these tasks that I can think of will be remain in the domain of the humans. Okay, now let's talk about high frequency and low criticality tasks. So remember that each dot represents like an individual workflow or an individual task. And when I think about this area, I think about clusters of tasks that might be different in use case, but require the same underlying tools or capabilities to complete. That's the key. So oftentimes when you think about an enterprise or you think about any type of business, maybe just like I'll go with RCM being like the back office for physicians, billing, revenue cycle management is what it stands for. There are a lot of tasks associated with submitting the claim that may be very different in nature, but require the same underlying systems. They require maybe, I don't know, an understanding of the CMS codes or an integration with EMRs. If you can find groups of these tasks that are generalizable not only within the industry, but also to other industries, you've hit upon an idea that VCs want to back, basically. You can kind of think about this as the classic horizontal software play. I need to communicate. There's a lot of things I need to do with communication. No matter what industry I'm in, communication has always been a friction. Okay, and then last, there's low frequency, low criticality tasks. And here, I think about like all the things that executive assistant would do, for example. Executive assistants might be like scheduling meetings. They might be booking events. They might be doing ad hoc IT troubleshooting. What I would posit to you is that the dots in this area are less related to one another than in the other areas. And because of that, in order to provide value in terms of building a company, you really need something that's a little more generalized, a little bit closer to AGI. So that's why I have here a generalized copilot, something that is not fine-tuned on a specific vertical, specific use case, specific task, something that's more general in nature, like a ChatGPT. This, for now, in our current capabilities, is not really the place where I would build right now, because there's so much low-hanging fruit in the green area. But for those that successfully build a generalized copilot of some sort, there's a lot of value there, for sure. Okay, so this is a pretty obvious statement, but task value increases with frequency and criticality. You can think about like Uber versus a platform that sells cars. You have to travel a lot. That pain is constant. You're always reminded about that friction. You don't buy a car very often. So it's no surprise. I mean, that's obviously oversimplifying, but it's no surprise that Uber is worth a lot of money. Likewise, with any task, the more frequent that it occurs, the more basically pain that it causes your end clients, the more valuable it will be to fix that pain. Now, I want to say that this like arrow here is just like where I see the market today, and it's just a working hypothesis. It could definitely change in the future as agents and AI gets better over time. Okay, and then a quick foray into like adoption before we get into some recommendations on how to build a business with AI. So it's really important to think about the people that will drive AI adoption within an org. So your basic task is like you are building something novel, something innovative, and you're introducing it to an organization that is going to be naturally resistant to adopting a new way of doing things. Oftentimes, even if the solution that you are proposing is way better, just in terms of quality and execution, it will be rate limited by the organizational changes that enterprise will need to undergo to adopt your product. So it really pays to think about how an enterprise will adopt your solution from the get-go. And there's this common wisdom or advice in Silicon Valley where you need to earn the right to worry about competition or value defense. I would say that for today, at least if you're building an AI, that is the wrong advice to follow. You really need to, from the get-go, think about how your solution will be adopted and then how you will defend the value you created from the get-go. So, you can think about the job processes as just series of tests, like software development. And then the second thing you should think about is when you introduce an agent into an organization, who does it actually benefit? So here, I don't know if you, So in this, I've introduced two kind of co-pilots or whatever that are helping out with these tasks. So just think about who does that actually benefit? Does it benefit the person that was previously responsible for this task? Or does it more benefit this person who's reviewing the work at the end of the task? It's the same with agents who are meant to be not co-pilots, but full replacements for individual tasks. You need to think about who it benefits. And then secondly, you need to think about who's going to buy the product. In developer land or in infra tooling, where I mostly spend a lot of my time, oftentimes the users of the tool are very different from the economic buyer of the tool. They might be individual developers who are using the tool. It might be the head of IT or the chief data officer that's buying the tool. And then just as I mentioned before, your adoption will be rate limited by org change. So in the next 2 or 3 years, I think at least our firm believes that the most immediate AI business opportunity lies in places where an organization can adopt that solution without changing much. So these are places where there's already natural escalation paths. Think about security or customer service. In customer service, if your agent screws up, they can escalate to the next tier of customer service. And so you can insert an agent very naturally into an organization, even if it's a huge one, and they will not have to change the way that they do customer service broadly in order to adopt your solution. Okay, and so last slide is how do you build an AI first or agentic business? Here's 3 different strategies or approaches. The first is the classic wedge. And it's a little bit small, but basically what you do is you start with one task that's extremely critical and extremely highly occurring. There's a company called Tenor. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, that all they do is they take your eFax and then they OCR it into your EMR. That's literally all they do. They raised $30 million just last year. Now, that in and of itself is not a standalone billion-dollar company, for sure. But the VCs who have invested in that company, I tried to invest in that company, know that by automating eFax to EMRs, they earn the right to address other workflows that are attached to billing. So you use that as an initial wedge, and then you address other workflows. Then there's the cluster kind of strategy. And the cluster strategy is also known as a compound strategy, where you look at all the tasks that require similar integrations, and you handle all of those. And those would be across different users typically. But say any type of integration with an EMR, you will maybe be an iPaaS solution, integration as a service solution. So anybody that wants to interface with this system will need to use you, whether that be a doctor or an admin, and then you handle all of those underlying, all the underlying complexity of integration. And then the third, which is fairly new, is a long tail approach. So the difference between automation that we've had over the past 8 to 10 years and now is that LLMs thrive with diverse tasks. The heterogeneity in tasks used to be a barrier for RPA, but now that's not the case. Now LLMs can address a wide diversity of tasks in an automated way. That's a real game changer. So you can think about not only, it used to be the case you have to think about the integrations, the underlying integrations. Now you can just think about the straight up user. So like this person does all of these different tasks. I will make an AI agent that will either greatly enhance or completely replace this person. And that was just not available for many solutions before. Yeah, that's it. My name is Simon. Feel free to reach out to me and hope you find it useful. Thanks.
Just one question.
Yeah, hi there. Just curious about essentially the importance of interfaces. I've heard that, for example, SaaS companies are threatened by the rise of agents. Figma may not exist in the future. What is your take on the interplay between SaaS and agents?
Yeah, it's like a deep question, but maybe I could put it this way: because one of the major critical components of the SaaS revolution was the pricing configuration, the pricing scheme, per seat basis. Now, if you're introducing an AI tool whose value proposition is premised on productivity, then of course you cannot price per seat. So if your solution is saying, I will 10x the productivity of your developers, you would be foolish to price on the seat of developers. And so this inherent tension has caused a lot of people to rethink how they go about pricing. Nowadays, you can do fixed pricing, you can even sell a guarantee, but it's more outcomes-based, much closer to outcomes-based than it is a locked-in contract. And then the second thing is that SaaS, as we know it, has often survived because of data gravity, meaning like I'm a system of record and all the record, like Epic or Cerner, all the records are held here, and they have a huge moat because of that. But it turns out that there are a ton of ancillary systems that use that data and have stored copies of that data. And if you can somehow find a way to extract what you need from that ecosystem of supporting systems, the value of the base system of record is not as valuable. And so there are people talking about no need for a CRM. Let's just infer everything you need from your email or Slack. So yeah, a couple of thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Simon. That was very insightful.